Welcome to the Naturally Healthy Pets Podcast. Let's get to it.
Hi, I'm Dr. Judy Morgan, your host for the Naturally Healthy Pets Podcast. My guest today is Elizabeth Ann Johnson, and we are going to talk about discovering your dog's 5-element personality and yours. And this is something that we talk about a lot at Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets. So Elizabeth Ann Johnson has been working with the health and wellness of small, large, and exotic animals and wildlife for 35 years as a veterinary technician, animal healer, and wildlife biologist and rehabilitator. Cool stuff. She is the author of Know Your Dog's True Nature and vice president of Global Wildlife Resources, a TEDx speaker. I've always been too scared to do that. Mentor, adventurer, and loving partner of Wilbur and Pretzel Rescues Extraordinaire. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Dr. Judy. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
So what are Wilbur and Pretzel?
So Wilbur and Pretzel are, well, Wilbur's an earth dog, which we're going to talk about. And Pretzel they're both rescues. Pretzel is a water dog, and she's about 3 years old. Sad beginning, born with a mother with no milk I always hate to say this, under a drug house with dead siblings around her and everything.
Oh.
So she's always a project, but she's hilariously funny and makes me sing with my flute every night. So I play my flute and she asks for it. And so she sings along. So we have a fun time. Yeah.
That is awesome. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned, and this is things that I talk about a lot, your 5-element personalities and types or constitution element, whatever we want to call it. So do you want to give a quick rundown on the 5 personalities and just a little bit about what they are?
Yes, absolutely. So the 5-element theory is very nature centric. It's basically built on nature, which, all of our indigenous people way back when needed to look at the platform of nature in order to figure out medicinal approaches for humans. And so starting way back then, they started with a seasonal approach, and the season approach would basically work in a circular structure around a year. So we're going to start with spring, and spring is the wood element time. And spring is a time of potential and big potential. And so when you think about spring as an element, not as your dog, your horse, or maybe your cats are cats, or a human, they're just full of potential. They have all sorts of energy, competitive energy. They're fast learners. They have just this drive for leadership, and they're amazing beings. They're like spring, where the grass is popping up out of the ground and just, everything's growing, the leaves are popping out, and that's all that potential in spring. And that's what these animals have. And so the next season we go to is summer, of course. And summer is the fire season, the fire element season. And that's always a very interesting animal. These animals, I say they have charismatic magnetism, because like fire in nature, we're kind of drawn to walk over to a nice campfire, right? It keeps us warm. It fed us with healthy food way back when. So we have this innate need to be near fire and to be around fire. And these dogs are like that. They're magnets. They're magnets with big fan clubs. So a lot of people know them, remember them. They're just drawn to go and pet them, and they bring this light of joy into our world. And they're just lovely, lovely beings. And then we move into late summer, and late summer is the earth element. And the earth element is that kid-loving dog, the family dog, kind of little lazy, they're total foodies. They love treats. They want treats. They have great ways to trick us into giving them treats. And yet they can get overweight really easily. So that's one of their things that we always have to watch with. And we'll
All
talk about
those
that in a minute.
big,
Yeah.
fat yellow labs.
Big fat yellow labs. That's exactly it. That's Wilbur. So Wilbur's in the book. There's a write-up about him and photos of them. And so, and he's always on the verge of chubby. So, and then we move into the autumn, and the autumn is the metal element. And the metal element is really interesting. I always call them the librarians. They're very purposeful and they're really intelligent, and yet they're kind of aloof. They don't really need to be petted. They don't really want to be petted. You know, they're the dog, you walk up to somebody and you kind of want to connect with the dog because you're a dog travert. I heard that term the other day, a dog travert. And you're talking with the human and you look at the dog and the dog goes and turns its head away, and that's a metal element often. They really need a job. They need a task. And they are excellent nosework dogs. In the giant system of TCM, we talk about sense organs. And so their sense organ is their nose. So I always say they have a few more molecules more than any other element has or any other dog has. And so they're excellent scent dogs. And they can get kind of sad if they don't have a purpose. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And our last element is winter, and that would be the water element. And I call them our four-legged spiritual teachers because they are here. Many of us feel they're here to kind of teach us some lessons about ourselves and about the world around us and about how to care for our animals as well, oftentimes. And you may have seen this, Dr. Judy, where, they get strange ailments and someone will go to 6, 7, 8 vets and no one can determine what it is. And then the owner gets on, takes a holistic approach or gets on the internet and looks something up and they figure it out. And by then that dog's already fixed everything in their body. So they're sort of like, they're wonderful teachers for us. And they're always very, very deeply connected to us. Sometimes your other dogs can be outside and they're having fun and they're playing. When a water element's outside, they're still knowing and wondering where you are. They're always connected. So they need a very deep connection. They're very emotional animals. And they're just wonderful. So that's the quick rundown on everybody.
I love that. We're all talking the same language, but you put it a little differently than I do. And I just love that. That was just a great description. So how do you tell people? So, somebody's listening and saying, I wonder what element my dog is. Like he had a little bit of this and he had a little bit of that. How do you recommend people go about figuring out their dog's primary element?
Yeah. Well, the first thing to know is we all have 5 elements. So we have, it's just a matter of percentages. And so the primary element is really the one that we work with the most in this situation. When we're doing medicinal for TCM, it's different. We're working from many, many vantage points to support the animal. But with this, for learning personality, you're going to see the stress responses of the animal in the primary element the most. And so one of the ways we find that out is by watching our animal's stress responses. And so I'm going to just run through really quick the stress responses. So the wood element stress response, in a human, we call it anger. But in an animal, animals don't get angry, but they get impatient. They get frustrated with like overtraining with a wood element. They're like, come on, move forward. I already got this, Right. And so you see frustration and they get overprotective, which can create aggression. So aggression, those are all offshoots of anger for the wood element dog. So if you start to see that your dog's overprotective for you, a lot, and you're actually, you're solid, you're not ill, you're not in need of protection, and they're making a job protecting you. And that's often a wood element dog.
This is where I think of all those those Rottweilers, those German Shepherds,
Malinois.
Yep. Do not put yourself as the veterinarian between the owner and that dog. It never goes well.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. And they're really interesting when we work on them. It's just it's a whole different situation than the other elements.
Yep.
And so the next one is fire, and fire has a really interesting one. Fire gets excess joy. These dogs are so social that they love fun, and they want fun, and they need engagement, and they constantly need social engagement. These are the separation anxiety dogs often. So just to add that in. And so the fire gets excess joy. And I always think excess joy sounds like a good thing, but it's not, until it's not, it can be a tricky thing. So it turns into this disturbance of the Shen, which is a TCM term that maybe Dr. Judy can share with you at some point. It's a little extensive, but in the disturbance of the Shen, they just get into a panic attack. So if you see your dog get overexcited playing with other dogs or being around a lot of people, and it just starts to kind of panic, the head goes up, the tail starts doing this, and then that dog has reached its threshold. And I always tell owners the easiest way to calm that back down is twofold. Ground yourself. Don't run in like a helium balloon and go, okay, let me get him out of there. That's just like 2 helium balloons all of a sudden together. But go ahead take a deep breath and then feel your feet on the ground. I always say, put your brain in your feet for just a second. Take one more deep breath and go in and get that dog calmly out. And then yin tong is something I like to teach people always. And it's right between our eyebrows. And so if you can, if it's not a moving target, just rub right through here or hold your finger. Oftentimes they're moving, so you can't really hold your finger there. But right between the dog's eyebrows. And you'll see it start to go, and calm down. And so that's a really good trick for people to utilize for their fire dogs. The next dog, earth dogs, they're worriers. So they worry when the suitcase comes out. They worry when the teenager goes off to college. They worry when, there's somebody's missing in the family or somebody passes. There's always worry. So they worry they're very routine based. So they worry about dinner time, if you're late on dinner. so that's the stress element. And you'll see worry as pacing sometimes, obsessive panting, and just following you around like glue, like you are late for dinner, and so that's what the earth element, how they kind of display their worry often. The next one is metal.
I'm gonna do a quick interruption. We've got 2 more elements to go. We need to take a break to hear from our sponsor. When we come back, we'll finish up with discovering your dog's primary. I like this stress response. This is a really good way to help figure it out. And this is. I mean, I know all these things, but it's just a new way of putting it, and I love it. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Have you heard of PEA? Dr. Judy is a huge fan because PEA is a naturally occurring fatty acid compound found in plants and animals that has been shown to have anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, and pain-relieving properties. With no known drug interactions, it is often used as a safer alternative to an NSAID, opioid, or steroid, but it can also be used alongside traditional medications if needed. Dr. Judy's PEA is a high-quality, human-grade option for pets. Podcast listeners can take advantage of 15% off of any size with the code PODCAST59. Get your Dr. Judy's PEA today at naturallyhealthypets.com. Are you interested in determining your pet's tcvm personality so that you can learn how to optimize their lifestyle and nutrition? Traditional Chinese veterinary medicine tcvm theory revolves around the 5 elements. They're known as fire, earth, metal, wood, and water. Each element is associated with specific organ systems and a specific personality or constitution. And each constitution can be predisposed to medical issues based on the organs associated with the personality. Take the free Pet Personality Quiz on naturallyhealthypets.com. Just search for Pet Personality Quiz and determine your pet's personality today.
Welcome back. You're listening to Naturally Healthy Pets podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Judy Morgan. My guest today, Elizabeth Ann Johnson, is helping us discover our dog's 5-element personality. And so we're talking about the stress response. We've gotten through the first 3 elements. So I think we're moving up to our metal dogs. And with these, I always think of like Aussies and border collies, like, boy, do they need a job. If you don't give them a job, their life is miserable.
Yeah. Jack Russells too. I've seen a lot of Jack Russells. They're obsessive about their job. Matter of fact, one time I saw a Jack Russell. I was walking into a barn to go treat some animals, and there was this white thing sticking out of a hole at the edge of the barn, and a tail going like this. And as I got closer, I saw 3 little toes in that white thing. And it was Jack, the head ratter of the barn. And he had 3 days before got stepped on by a horse, and he wanted to get back to his job. So he had dug that hole, was down in there, and you could only see the cast and the tail wagging. And it was just, I thought, boy, what a little metal element.
Going to do this job no matter what.
So purposeful. So metal stress response is grief, and grief is really kind of elusive. So when these animals, these animals really should be working dogs. They need a job, and if they don't have a job, they make a job, and that's not always very pretty. And so it's same with the wood dog, but not quite as much as the metal. So when they lose a bonded handler, or they lose someone in their household, or they find mistrust with their handler if their handler's not doing things correctly. So remember the librarian, they want everything correct, and they're very determined about that. That's really important for them. And so if they feel like they've distanced themselves from their handler, or somebody has left them, and these including working dogs, they will grieve. And so at the end of the day after working, they'll go and they'll hide. These are the dogs that like go hide in the other room and rest and just kind of recover. They don't want to be around all their people. They want to get fed, and then they want to go rest. And sometimes in that rest, you can see the grief. So grief is elusive, but you'll see kind of this almost apathetic lifestyle that they create for themselves when they're grieving. So that one's a little tricky. The last element is the water element, and the water element, that stress response is visceral fear. So it's not just fear, it's visceral fear. And that element, is really prone to visceral fear because its sense organ is hearing. And so when it hears a loud noise, thunder, backfire, you name it, a cannon. I had that on a ship one time with one of my best water element dogs. And just, they go into a panic with those loud noises, thunderstorms too. And so visceral fear is different than fear. Fear is, kind of like, oh, I can look at that and I can do that. Visceral fear is the dog that, if he's not on leash, runs down the road. If you've had the best recall for 10 years, that dog's not listening to you. The whole sympathetic nervous system just goes into a heightened state, and they can't hear you anymore. They shut off their hearing. And so it's a very sad thing. And these animals are rehomed a lot because of that. They get, especially horses, because horses break down barns and do things like that when they get that visceral fear. So the other way we can tell a water element is that they shape shift. So if you look at water in nature, water can be snow, mist, rain, ocean, calm pools, tsunamis, a dot of water on a blade of grass. It takes all these ways of being, and it shapeshifts constantly. And these water element dogs shapeshift as well. So they'll shapeshift through all the elements. So one day your water dog will start acting like a fire dog. And then, maybe a month later, you're starting to see a wood dog. And some of that can be seasonal. They can bring that in. But sometimes, young dogs especially, they'll do it in a week. They'll change all 5 elements. And so that's the other way you have a water element. So
yeah, those are the ones in the vet clinic that are hiding under the bench, cowering, shivering, not coming out for anything, don't want you to touch them. They're scared to death. It's funny, my, not knowing anything about this when I was young, my grandmother had a Dalmatian. That dog was scared to death of thunderstorms, and so was my grandmother. And so every time there was a thunderstorm, you would find the two of them huddled up in a little ball in the bottom of her master bedroom closet. It was not a walk-in closet. They were just smashed into there. And that's how they spent every single thunderstorm. So yeah, it's kind of interesting when you say, well, the hearing is what goes with the water element. So, those fears of the toaster pops and the microwave beeps. And if you think about how many things, like the phone ringing right now, you think about how many things in our house make noise. We all have so many electronics and so many things that are constantly going off. And if you have one of those fearful dogs, that's kind of a nightmare for them. Try to shut off as many of those beeps and bells and whistles as you can, because it's really not fun for them.
Yeah, and that is a perfect dissertation on why they're rehomed, because people don't understand, and they just go, well, I don't know what to do with this stuff, or this horse, or this human, So yeah, it's I believe it or not, I'm actually a water element, so I totally embody all of that, and yet in some of these animals and some of us humans, we don't have fear. And I once had a Chinese doctor that I was working with, and he was my mentor. I'd bring in cases and he would help me out, and then I'd often injure myself in the process or something, in doing something fun. And he said, "You're a water element, right?" And I said, "Yeah, except when I'm not," I said, and he laughed. And then he said, "I figured it out. You don't have fear, do you?" And I said, "No, I really don't have much fear. I did. That's my TEDx. Like I don't have much fear." And he said, "Well, that's it. If you are imbalanced, you're supposed to have fear." And so it was an interesting thing for me. And I've learned to go, "Oh, I think that's fear now. Okay." And honor it, because it's supposed to be there. It's not that I've overcome anything. It's just that I don't have that much fear.
It's so, we don't have time to get into all of the interplay between the elements, but it's so interesting how they all interact. So I'm a wood personality. Now, a wood personality, we're the type A personality. We're the, I'm going to kill it. I did undergraduate college in 3 years instead of 4, because I was bound, bent, determined, going to get into vet school, going to do this, just very focused. And, then I would get all this frustration, because it's got to accomplish this, and so my whole life, I've been that person who I hold everything in until I don't, and then I explode. And, heaven help the person who's in my path during that explosion. I've learned to control it a little better in my old age, but not that great. But what controls wood element is metal. The axe chops down the tree. And so my imbalance for my entire life of my wood being so excessive, my metal's been trying to just chop that tree down for 65 years. And where does it show up? The metal's the respiratory element. So it's my lungs. And
Oh,
so
right.
I get out of breath very quickly. I've had really bad cases of bronchitis and chest
Mhm.
infections. And so the elements interplay so much. So now, now that I know what I know, it's like, geez, I really should have calmed down the wood with some other things somewhere along the way so that my metal element would be a little happier right now.
Mhm.
Notice my hair all went gray because that's the color of that element. So,
Right.
it's just so interesting how all the different things play together. Now, your book, Know Your Dog's True Nature, all these things that you're talking about, are all of those things discussed in there for people to figure out their dogs?
Yes, they are. We tried to. I kept bringing things to my publisher. I want to do quizzes, so we have quizzes that are really
cool.
accurate for people, for dogs and humans. The second half of the book is humans because
Cool.
it's all about relationship, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
so there's two parts to relationship, and that's your dog or your horse. The horse book might come out in a year or so, or and the human part. So we did include those. Those are really fun. People love doing them because if they have any questions, it usually nails it down right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
And then we also have charts, and we just have information. We have stories. We have acupoints. So we have a couple of acupoints for balancing, acupressure points for balancing that particular meridian. So it's full of a lot. And I think one of the things to consider here really quick, Dr. Judy, too, is the support mechanisms for them. And so when you were talking about wood, wood needs movement. It needs and it wants movement. So one of the biggest support elements for your wood dog or your wood person is to get them out and get them moving, because those shepherds and Malinois and Rottweilers, they can't sit in a house all day and do nothing. They're just not that type of dog. So that's the help for that. And the fire dog needs social interaction, just needs it. It's really important. That's your support for that dog. One of the main support things. The earth needs, it needs family, and it needs routine-based lifestyle for that animal. Super important. And this goes for all rescue dogs once you figure your rescue dogs out, and also older dogs. It's just a diluted version of what they need for the elder dogs oftentimes.
Exactly.
Metal needs a purpose. So find a purpose, even, take them to nose work if you need to, and just let them feel like they have a job. It's super important.
Those are the ones when I tell people, look, that dog wants to herd something. Let them herd your kids. Get them some ducks. I don't care.
Yes.
Give them something to herd. Get some cats.
Yeah.
Teach them to herd cats, because nobody's figured out how to do that.
Yeah. That'd be good on Instagram, wouldn't it?
It would. I don't have any metal dogs. This has been fascinating. We're out of time. I love what you're doing, and it's an extension of what I talk about at Naturally Healthy Pets so often. And you do have a giveaway that we will put in the show notes so that people can get that information. And for anyone who's listening on drjudymorgan.com, we do have a pet personality profile quiz and a human personality profile quiz. The more of these quizzes you do, so if you can do hers, you can do ours, you put them together, you'll be able to figure out a little better. My husband is the only person I've never figured out, because every time he does it, and we've been together 17 years, so we do this a lot. He is always, I got 5 in this column, 5 in this column, 5. And like every column is exactly the same. I'm like, honey, either you're the most well-rounded person in the world, or you're just not being honest. I don't know. I can't figure him out. So, but he is well-rounded and he's a great guy. So doesn't matter.
Fun. That's hilarious.
Well, thank you very much for being my guest today. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Judy.
Thanks for listening to another great Naturally Healthy Pets episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for some helpful links. And if you enjoy the show, please be sure to follow and listen for free on your favorite podcast app. We value your feedback and would love to hear from you on how we're doing. Visit drjudymorgan.com for healthy product recommendations, comprehensive courses, upcoming events, and other fantastic resources. Until next time, keep giving your pet the vibrant life they deserve.
The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform. It is no substitute for professional care by a veterinarian, licensed nutritionist, or other qualified professional. You're encouraged to do your own research and should not rely on this information as professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Dr. Judy and her guests express their own views, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets neither endorses or opposes any particular view discussed here.